Happy holidays, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us again for our 12 Days of Christmas mini-series that we are hosting here at TS Wed. Taryn Wyant Event Planning and Design is a wedding planning and design firm that specializes in destination weddings worldwide. We are hopping on here just to help provide a little bit of education for newly engaged couples who might be considering a destination wedding. We know it's a super joy-filled season, but also certainly one that can be a little bit daunting. So hopefully some of the tidbits that we share throughout this series are some things that can help shed a little bit of light on the process and hopefully guide you towards making the best decision as you begin your planning process. Today, we are going to be talking about wedding timelines. One thing that clients inquire with us about oftentimes is how do we manage the curation and execution of our timeline? What does that process look like to ensure that the wedding week itself is as smooth and seamless as possible? This is well honed. We have been doing wedding management for nearly 13 years now. And the more experience that we have under our belt, the more weddings that we've garnered, the more refined our timeline process has become and the smoother each and every event flows. And so we're super grateful to have all this experience under our belt. And so let me dive into how we approach the timeline process. So the first thing that we do once we get all of your vendors booked and confirmed is we will curate it's not an outline, but it is not a fully comprehensive timeline. It is a first draft of a timeline. This includes all of the different vendor services. It includes the specifics to your wedding itself, who's giving speeches and toasts, what's your photography shot list, do we have any cultural traditions that we're incorporating, do we have any entertainment, things of that nature. And we'll put that timeline together. Generally speaking, this is about 6 to 8 pages for the wedding day alone. From there, we then provide this timeline to our vendor partners. So we'll send it out to our florist, for example, and say, okay, here we go. We have you arriving on site at 10 a.m. Your firm set time, as you can see, is 3 p.m. The floral designer might come back to me and say, okay, this is great. We can absolutely execute this if the rentals are 100% up and done by the time we arrive on site. Okay, great. Then we have to go, wonderful. We're going to go back to the rental vendor and make sure that they can do an early set time for us. To ensure that everything is ready to go once our floral design team arrives on property. And so this happens for almost every single vendor with whom we partner. And so it is a long process. It is a little bit of an arduous process, but it is so valuable and it makes the entire timeline experience from then on so refined and smooth. So once we get all of that vendor feedback and we update the timeline in an even more detailed manner, then we share it with our clients and we say, okay, here you go, darlings. Here's the proposed timeline for your event. Take a look. Let's go through it together line by line. And we'll do that. We'll schedule a Zoom session or a phone call and we'll pop through that timeline moment by moment to make sure that your expectations are appropriately set and that we are accommodating your needs. If it's really important to you, for instance, to have time with your bridesmaids before leaving to do a toast, to have some pictures, and yet that's not in the timeline, this is the time where we find that out. We're going to go, great, we're so happy you shared that with us. We're going to add that in and that'll push everything else back 15 minutes. Whatever it may be. So we collaborate with you and make sure that all of your personal and nuanced requests are being met and accomplished within the scope of our timeline. From there, we have the real-time timeline. So the wedding week comes, we get ready as best as we can in advance, and then we arrive on site and begin the execution of the timeline. Now, for you, your timeline experience is over. You're done. You follow the timeline. For us, things change in real time. If a vendor is tardy, then we have to adjust. If there's traffic, we have to adjust. If there are weather considerations, if it's super windy and you have an outdoor tented reception with tall centerpieces, we have to adjust. And so we are present in real time with our system, with our iPads, adjusting and editing our timeline as needed, and then shooting that out to the vendors. Because if anything is edited of the timeline, they need to know about it so that they can then fulfill their obligations on their end. So this is part of why it's super important to have a really experienced and calm, cool, and collected planner on site. Not only is the experience going to lend itself beautifully to quick, real-time problem solving and adjusting, but also if you have somebody who's calm, cool, and collected on site, if there were 17 adjustments to the timeline to accommodate weather concerns that you were even never made aware of, that means when you show up on site, everything is wonderful and you think it's all gone according to plan. And I'm standing there with a smile and 2 glasses of champagne, knowing that it was really hard for those first few hours, but you don't need to know about that. That's not your job to know about. It just makes it so much more enjoyable for our clients to have somebody present on site that can really help facilitate what ultimately the timeline is about, which is a stress-free and successful event production. Why do we have an 8 to 10 page timeline? It can feel really big. It can feel really like, oh my goodness, this is overwhelming. But it's not. It really does help curate the experience that you want for your wedding day, that you want to gift to your guests on your wedding day, and that's just going to help you be able to focus on this joy-filled, completely immersive experience with your family members and friends that's once in a lifetime, so that all of the logistical nuances are left to the professionals. So hosting a wedding timeline is super important. The way that we have honed our process through years of experience has really proven to be an exceptionally successful manner by which we manage the events so that our clients can just sit back, relax, and know that everything is taken care of.